book lovers, and welcome back or welcome to Nat Cat's Bookish Cafe. I am here today to do my mid-month wrap-up for December. Alright, so today is December 16th. Happy birthday to my father, and I guess anyone else who has a December 16th birthday. But I am here to go through all the books that I have read in the first half of the month, as well as let you know my plans for the second half of the month and what I'm currently working on. I have been vlogging my experience all throughout December. I believe the first two vlogs should be out, so I'm not going to go too in depth about my feelings about these books. If you want to know more, go ahead and check out one of those vlogs. So far this month, I have completed 5 books and DNF'd 1 book. So we are going to go ahead and go through all those, starting with the DNF. So the book that I DNF'd, unfortunately, was The Princess Dearest Guards by Bo Van Dalen. This is a queer fantasy novella. It is supposed to be polyamorous, and it also features a trans main character. Overall, it had quite a few things going for it. I'm not a huge novella person, but because of the trans representation, the poly representation, and just the fantasy setting, I decided to go ahead and give it a shot. And unfortunately, I only got like 36 pages into it before I had to just put it down. It really was primarily the writing style was not working for me whatsoever. I didn't like some of the word choices that the author was using. It gave me a little bit of the ick, to be honest. And also, despite it being a novella, only like 101 pages, I did want the characters to have some sort of emotional connection between each other before they started having sex. It just happened all so suddenly, and I also had to suspend my disbelief a little bit with how the guards talked to the prince even before they started their sexual relationship. It just wasn't realistic. It's not the way a guard would talk to a prince that they've known for one day. And so I just had to put it down. Even though it was a short book, I knew that I wouldn't enjoy it or anything like that. I usually don't rate my DNF, so I didn't read this one, especially since I didn't even get 50% through. But it just really, writing style wise, pacing style wise, was not for me. As far as books that I actually finished this month, the first book that I finished was Heaven's Official Blessing, Volume 6 by Mo Shang-Tong Shui, and I gave this book 4.5 stars. The series is just getting better and better in my opinion. This volume was very difficult to read. It was kind of depressing for a big chunk of it, but overall in the series, in case you're new here, if you're not, I'm sorry, you're probably like, oh my gosh, do I have to hear the synopsis of this series one more time? Yes, because there's 2 more books in the series. But in this series, we follow Shilon, and he was a prince of a prosperous nation, and one day he ascended to godhood at the age of 17. He was well beloved. They built tons of shrines in his honor, and when plague and war came to his country, he attempted to assist, but it seemed like he actually was making things worse, and so people started to perceive him as a god of misfortune, and he fell from heaven. Throughout the series, we get to see different parts of his 800-year lifespan. We see his past, we see his present, and in the present he meets up with a man called Hao Chen. And Hao Chen is actually a very powerful and dangerous ghost king, and most of the heavenly officials are telling Shilon to please stay away from him. However, the two have a very deep connection, and throughout the series they slowly develop a bit of a relationship. Slowly, emphasis on slow, like we're on book 6 out of 8 and there still isn't exactly a relationship. You can definitely tell that the two of them care very deeply for each other, and there might have been a little bit of kissing, yep, but otherwise it is the definition of slow burn. As I said, this book is very depressing. We get to see Shilon shortly after his first fall from godhood. He actually fell, I think, twice, and in present day is in his third ascension. He is not a very lucky person, and we kind of get to see why in the story, and I think it's kind of interesting. There were also aspects of the story that really showed certain people's devotion to Shilon and his devotion to other people as well, and we just really get to see him at a low point. And it wasn't a pleasant experience, but I also think it was really well written, and I definitely felt the emotions that the author was trying to get me to feel. And overall, I just thought that this was the strongest of the series so far, and I'm really excited to go ahead and read volumes 7 and 8 and finish up this series. Up next, we finished In the Lives of a Puppet by TJ Klune, and I ended up unfortunately only giving this 3.5 stars. 3.5 stars for me is not an awful rating, but it's just slightly above average. In this book, we are following Victor, and he is a human who is living with robots. You could say he was adopted by his android father, Giovanni, and Victor has created or brought back to life 2 decommissioned robots, one being Nurse Ratchet, who is a nurse robot with sociopathic tendencies, as well as Rambo, who is a Roomba robot or a Roomba vacuum cleaner who has pretty extreme anxiety. One day, he and Nurse Ratchet and Rambo are out in the scrapyard looking for pieces that they can use to tinker with, and they come across another android, and this one they end up calling Hap, and they kind of bring him back to life. But when they do so, it kind of sets off a series of events that leads to Giovanni being taken from them. And so the little family and Hap set out to the city of Electric Dreams, I believe it's called, to see if they can get Gio back. For me, a couple things that I struggled with throughout this book is the pacing of the story. I felt like I was honestly a little bit bored for a good chunk of this story, and I also really struggled to connect with our main character Victor. I just felt like he was a bit of a bland main character, and the way that the story ends kind of makes it seem like that's what the author was intending. And I don't want to go into spoilers or anything, but at the same time, oftentimes when I'm reading a main character, I feel like they should have main character energy, and I felt like the side characters like Nurse Ratchet and Rambo really overpowered him, and so that was a little bit frustrating at times because I was just struggling to root for him, and I just felt like he didn't have as much growth as I was hoping he would have throughout this journey. At the same time, I still think that this book had a lot of things that I usually enjoy in TJ Klune's books. The found family aspect was, of course, really well done as usual. I do think that it had rather realistic depictions of grief, which TJ Klune does well. He does touch a little bit on the father-son relationships, which I like when he does that. I think he needed to do it more, especially pre-Gio's kidnapping, because I think it would have caused that kidnapping event to be a lot more impactful. But because Victor and Gio didn't spend too much time interacting before the kidnapping, it just fell a little bit flat in my opinion. But overall, still glad that I finally got around to another TJ Klune book, and I will say that this one was better than Under the Whispering Door, and most people seem to agree with that, so it's nice to know that he's on the up and up, hopefully. The third book that I finished was actually another novella, and that is Treble by Rousey Adams. This replaced the book Cinnamon Roll. If you watched my TBR video, that book was no longer available on KU, unfortunately, so I ended up switching out with Treble, and I ended up giving this book 4.5 stars. So hey, you know, I can enjoy a romance novella if an author does it right. In this book, we are following Hendrix, Nova, and Sadie. So this is another polyamory book, one that actually worked for me. And Hendrix and Nova are a married couple. I want to say they've been together for about 10 years since they met in college, and they have always been polyamorous, but they have never dated the same person. And as far as I know, they've never even really interacted or met any of their partners until one day both of them find that they are very interested in Sadie, and they start forming a relationship between all three of them. And the sex in this book was excellent. It was so hot, and I really felt the connection between these characters. I really saw how they were really attracted to each other, and how that attraction turned from just wanting a good time together to wanting something deeper, and that going from just lust to love throughout this story. I think this book is only 102 pages, but that author really packed in that relationship content really well. I also really liked the way that she talked about polyamory. I thought that she did an excellent job pointing out some of the false assumptions people have about polyamory, that it's not just dudes who want to like hook up with a bunch of other women outside of their marriage, or that they want to see their wife like make out with some other woman kind of situation. That's very much about communication, and that it can be very difficult, especially if you have different communication styles and different needs between all of the partners. And I just thought she did an excellent job with that. Overall, a great read if you're looking for a short, smutty novella. I 10 out of 10 recommend this book. Up next, I picked up another KU book, and this is Junk Shop Blues by Cole McCade. This is the second book in the Criminal Intentions series. In this series, we follow Malcolm and Sanjay, and they are homicide detectives for the Baltimore Police Department. And they had met in the first book after they both volunteered to take on a case where a killer was going after young queer men. Both of these detectives are queer, so they were very heavily invested in this case. And here in the second book, we are seeing a lot of the trauma that is sticking with them from that case. They are also obviously looking into another case where it looks like the person who is responsible may come from a pretty wealthy, powerful family. This is going to be, I think, an 11 book series, and there is going to be a relationship between these two as far as I know, but it is very slow burn. Here in the second book, you can definitely tell that they're interested in each other, but they haven't really acted on their feelings too much. However, I love Cole McCade's writing. I think it's so perfect for kind of these sexy romances that also have these darker undertones to them. I thought that there was some really beautiful scenes depicted through his writing, and there was one sex scene, not between the main characters, but between one of the characters in a one-night stand that was chef's kiss. I also really enjoyed how he depicted the characters' emotions. Both of them, but especially Malcolm, were not quite themselves due to the trauma that they experienced with the previous case, but at the same time, they are very aware of each other, and just being in their heads while they're trying to deny their feelings for each other is very entertaining. I feel like the mysteries are well done and are fun to follow, but I'm honestly here for the characters. There's definitely some stuff happening on the sidelines that I feel is going to become a bigger part of the story, and I'm looking forward to seeing where it goes. As for the final book that I have finished this month, I finished A Lady for a Duke by Alexis Hall, and this is a historical romance where we are following Viola, who is a trans woman. She had gone to the war, to Waterloo, and was presumed dead, and she took this opportunity to kind of disappear and reappear as the person she was always supposed to be. It's been 2 years since the war, and one day her sister-in-law, since she's living with her sister-in-law and brother at this point, receives a letter from a family friend that makes it sound like this friend is somewhat miserable, and it seems to have to do with her older brother, the Duke of Gracewood, who used to be Viola's best friend. It seems that this Duke is not handling the death of his best friend well at all. And so Viola reluctantly heads to his estate to kind of help his sister leave the situation and maybe go to London and have a season. But when she gets there, she realizes that she also needs to help Justin to overcome this grief. Obviously, a romance develops between the two, but they are struggling to find a way to be together, not just because they both have some issues that they need to work through before they promise themselves to anyone, but also because Viola had to give up her title to become a woman and is now just a lady's companion, so she's not technically worthy of marrying a duke. I ended up giving this book 4 stars. There was a lot of things about this book that I really enjoyed. I really liked the way that the author described having a disability and having a PTSD, especially having those things as a man who is a duke and is supposed to be seen as someone very powerful and intimidating, and kind of trying to have to pretend like you're okay when you very much aren't. I also obviously enjoyed the trans representation that was in the story and just what our character had to give up and go through just to be herself. Overall, I also thought that the romance was very sweet. I really enjoyed the conversations that they had throughout the stories. It was very romantic. A few things that I struggled a little bit with is the pacing. This is a 450-page book. I feel like it probably could have been cut down to like 400 pages. So sometimes it was just a little slow. There was also kind of a side plot that involved the Duke's sister. And while I do kind of understand why the author put it in there to kind of help develop the Duke and the sister's relationship with each other, it still sometimes felt a little bit forced. And therefore I only gave it 4 stars, despite this being a 5-star prediction, but I did have a really great time with it and was glad that I finally got to it. All right, so those are all the books I have read so far. Let's talk a little bit about what I'm currently working on and what I still need to get to. So before I move into what I'm currently working on, I just want to give you a quick picture of what my bingo board looks like right now. As you can tell, I've already accomplished 1 bingo, and the book I'm currently working on is actually going to give me my 2nd bingo, so we are looking pretty good. For my current reads, I am reading Redemption by Kenya Wright, and I'm about 15% into the story, close to the 60-page mark, and this is a Christmas story. I would say at this point it is relatively dark, but obviously it could become more Christmassy throughout the story. At this point it's giving more Die Hard Christmas movie than like Hallmark Christmas movie, but I am enjoying it. So that is way more Christmassy and way more sweet is my audiobook, and that is Love Light Farms by B.K. Borison. I think about 53% through this audiobook. I have not picked it up for the last week, so I'm not saying I'm not enjoying it. It's just definitely not been a priority. I have not been in an audiobook mood for some reason, and I'm trying not to force it because it'll just push me into a slump, but hopefully I do continue to work on this throughout the next week or so. And this is just a Christmas romance story, a friends to lovers situation that starts off as fake dating and is set on a Christmas tree farm. So definitely Christmassy vibes. Just haven't been picking it up probably will be like a 3.5 star rating. As far as books on my TBR that I still need to get to, these are the 2 physical books that I have left. I will probably prioritize The Ghost Bride since this one is on my winter TBR, but it would be kind of awesome if I could get to Upgrade by Blake Crouch as well. I do technically have an audio book which was called To Shape a Dragon's Breath. I don't know if I will get to that this month, 1, because I'm not really listening to audiobooks, and 2, because it's not available to me yet. When I put it on hold, it had a 10-week wait, so I'm not holding my breath that I will be able to get to that, but it is what it is. All right, guys, so those are all the books that I have read and that I'm working on and still want to get to. I would love to know how the first half of your December has gone, what books you have been reading. Have you been doing any fun holiday activities? I will continue to vlog, so I would love if you stuck around to watch those. As always, thank you so much for your support by watching my channel, and I hope to see you next time. Bye!